For 2,000 years, there's been one statement from Jesus that's been used to justify wars, tear families apart, and pretty much challenge everything we think we know about the Prince of Peace. So, what on earth did he say that was so shocking? And there it is, Matthew chapter 10, verse 34. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. I mean, just let that sink in for a second. Wait, what? The Prince of Peace didn't come to bring peace? He came to bring a sword? This is the very verse that has had followers scratching their heads and critics pointing fingers for centuries.
Exactly. It's such a huge contradiction, right? I mean, for centuries, we've called Jesus the Prince of Peace. We sing all the songs about peace on earth. We quote the verses about turning the other cheek and loving your enemies. So how in the world do we square that with this incredibly jarring statement about bringing a sword? It just doesn't seem to fit.
To really get to the bottom of this, we first have to understand why this verse triggers such intense reactions. Because believe me, it has a long and really difficult history of being misunderstood and frankly misused. Well, you've got critics who point to this and say, see, told you so. Jesus wasn't peaceful. He literally said he came to bring a sword. And you can't ignore that throughout history, this verse has been twisted to justify horrible things, like religious wars and persecution. And even on a really personal level, it's been weaponized in family arguments when one person's faith causes a huge rift with their loved ones. It kind of helps to realize that we aren't the first people to be totally confused by this. Just try to imagine being one of his disciples. You left everything behind, you probably signed up thinking you were following a Messiah who was going to bring a kingdom of peace, and then he starts talking about swords and division. I mean, it must have been completely and utterly bewildering. But this is where the original context is absolutely critical. To really get what Jesus meant, we have to understand what a sword actually represented to his audience. It wasn't just a physical weapon, it meant something more. So in that culture, a sword was this really powerful symbol of division. It stood for the power to separate, to cut right through, to make a crystal clear distinction between one thing and another. And that right there, that is the crucial point. And this idea connects perfectly with how the Bible uses this imagery in other places. The book of Hebrews actually describes the Word of God as a two-edged sword that divides and judges our innermost thoughts. See, it's a tool of clarification, not a tool of destruction. I love this analogy. Think about what happens when you turn on a flashlight in a pitch-black room. The light doesn't violently attack the darkness, right? It just reveals what's already there. But by its very presence, it creates this super clear division between light and shadow. Jesus is saying his truth works in the exact same way. So when you put it all together, Jesus wasn't talking about literal violence at all. He was making a prediction. He was basically saying, hey, just so you know, my message of truth is going to be so clear and so sharp that it's going to cut right through all the comfortable lies people tell themselves. And yes, that is absolutely going to cause division. And this leads us to the even deeper meaning, because Jesus didn't just stop with the sword. He got even more specific and, frankly, more uncomfortable about the kind of division he was talking about. In the very next verse, he says this. He talks about turning family members against each other. So if you thought the sword quote was shocking, this sounds downright awful. But again, we've got to look closer. Let's be clear. Jesus is not anti-family. Not at all. What he's doing is being radically honest about what happens when a person encounters ultimate, life-changing truth. It forces a choice, and sometimes that choice is going to put you at odds with the people you love the most, who just might not understand. You have to decide, will you choose truth, even if it costs you those precious relationships? And this really gets to the heart of what kind of peace Jesus is actually offering. The world often defines peace as just avoiding conflict, sweeping things under the rug, pretending everything is fine. But Jesus's peace is totally different. It's a true peace, one that's built by confronting the hard issues with truth, even when it's painful at first. So how can any of this possibly be good news? Well, first, it shows that Jesus was honest. He never promised an easy path. Second, the division he's talking about actually reveals what's real and what isn't in your life. And third, it shows that truth itself is more valuable than some superficial peace that just ignores reality. So yeah, the verse is still jarring, and it's meant to be, because it demands a choice. Jesus is basically saying you can't just pick and choose the comfortable parts of the message.
The sword of truth has to cut through our own comfortable lies before we can ever find any kind of real, lasting peace. So the question he leaves us with is, which one are you going to choose?